Hello there and welcome back. You are listening to the Photography Made Simple podcast with me, your host, Audrienne from Live Snap Love, where I aim to give you all the tools, resources, and inspiration you need to help you capture the beauty of your days through photography. Now, this week on the podcast, I wanted to share with you what my plans are for my photography in 2025. I've decided that this is a year I'm going to focus a little bit more on my own photography skills. I've spent the last few years really focused on teaching other people photography, and as a result, I feel like I've fallen into a little bit of a rut with my own photography. So I'm going to be planning to do some things to give me a bit of a kickstart photography-wise in 2025, and I'm going to share them with you today. Now, obviously, I don't expect you to be wanting to do exactly the same things that I'm going to be doing in 2025. But my hope is that by sharing this, it will help you to think about what you might want to focus on in 2025 for your own photography journey and maybe adapt some of the things that I'm going to be doing for yourself. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in to my first plan for 2025, and that is to complete a Project 365. Now, if you haven't heard what a Project 365 is, it is when you take a photo a day, every day for an entire year. Now, in theory, you can start a Project 365 at any time. So you can start it in March and July, halfway through January, whenever you want to do it. Obviously, the 1st of January is a great time to start. It's that natural start to the new year, and you've got the natural end on the 31st of December. But if you missed that boat and you want to do it, don't worry, you can do it anytime. Just start from the 1st of February and go for it and do it until the end of the year or until the 1st of February 2026. So just go ahead and do whatever you want to do if you do want to start that. Now, a Project 365 is really good for photographers of all levels and of all genres. So if you are a beginner, you might think, oh, well, I don't need to do that. But actually, it's so good for you because it really helps you to build in muscle memory. And you'll get much quicker at choosing the right aperture, the right shutter speed, or just get quicker at changing your settings. So it's really good just for building in that muscle memory. It's also great if you are more advanced because you then, once you've got all that, that basic stuff down and you've laid those strong foundations of being able to understand all the settings on your camera, then you can really focus on light and composition. And taking a photo each day really helps you with that. Light, amazing for learning about light because you are forced somewhat. Obviously, nobody's actually standing there forcing you, but if you've committed to taking a photo each day, you are going to have to photograph in different types of light. So we do have a tendency as photographers to, stick to the same light that we know and we like. But actually, the key thing here is if you can mix it up, not only will you get more interesting photos, you'll get better at photography because if you are able to take photos in all types of light, from low light to sunny days to cloudy days, then you'll feel much more confident as a photographer overall that you can handle anything that is thrown at you. Plus, it's going to give you this really lovely wide range of images. And again, composition, great one to really be able to play with different things when you're taking a photo each day. Remember, it doesn't matter. Each photo does not have to be a masterpiece. That is not the goal of a Project 365. It is just to get out there, try different things and practice. Now, even if you've got no real concerns about using a Project 365 to get better at photography, it's also just a wonderful way of having a record of your days. The years that I have successfully completed a Project 365, which is many years ago now, my son was younger, and it's just wonderful to look back. And not every day was photos of my son. I mean, even he would have got fed up with that. But it was so nice to be able, we can go back and look through all these photos. And we've got the record of this entire year of our days together as a family. Now, with my son being older now, he's in his teenage years and really does not want to get his photograph taken. So I totally respect that. So actually doing a Project 365 has been a little bit harder the last few years because of that. And I have actually failed for the last 3 years. Now, I'm probably going to fail again this year. But the key thing is always to bear in mind that remember what the goal is for it. It doesn't mean that you absolutely have to have 365 photos. It just means if you are committing to a Project 365 and you miss a few days and you end up doing 5 days out of 7, that is fantastic. That's all that matters. So although I don't actually expect to do 365 photos because I know that I'm going to, fail at some point, then that's okay. I'm just going to keep going regardless. So that's why I am doing a Project 365 for me, is because I wanted to kind of get out of the little bit of a rut that I've been in with photography, because it forces me to go and take a photo each day, to start photographing in different types of light, try out some different composition tools, and so on. So it's really just for me, just to help me get out of the little bit of a rut that I have fallen into. Now, I shared the other day that I was completing a Project 365 on Instagram, when someone had mentioned to me, what do you do? Do you take prompts, daily prompts to help you complete it and so on? You can if you want. If that is what you want to do, then absolutely go for it. I find that far too restrictive. I don't want to do that. I want to rely on my own creativity, and I can just dive into prompts whenever I want to or need to. So if I do get a bit, don't know what to do today, then I might go and look at a prompt. But really, I just kind of take whatever. So that's how I do it. That's what I'll be doing it for. And I'm looking forward to it. I've already started, obviously, and I've already missed a couple of days. I think, we're about 2 weeks in as I record this, and I've already missed a couple of days. So, the 365 in theory has already failed, but you know what? It doesn't matter. As long as I take at least one photo a week, I will be happy. Okay, so first thing for me is a Project 365, but for you, that might be a different type of project. It might be a Project 52 where you take one photo a week. It might be working to a prompt list. Lots of different things. So what I'm going to do is, in the show notes for this episode, I'm going to link to a previous podcast that I recorded a couple of years ago, which gave you 5-year-long photography projects that you can do that aren't a Project 365. So if you've missed the boat on a Project 365 and you don't want to start it midway through the year, or you just don't fancy the idea of taking a photo a day, I'll link to that and you can go and give that one a listen, because I think you'll find some great ideas in there as well. Okay, so the next thing that I am going to be focusing on is actually learning how to use my Lensbaby. So you might remember this if you've been listening to the podcast, but I bought myself a new lens, which is a Lensbaby. Now, if you haven't heard of these are creative lenses. And what they do, well, you get different types, but the one that I have is a Sol 45. And what this does is gives you one sweet spot of focus surrounded by blur. So it's a very unique look. It's not for everybody. Not everyone's going to like the look of a Lensbaby, but it gives you just this really soft blur all around one very small point of focus. So it's like a tilt shift lens, and you can move this point of focus around. It's hard to describe. If you go to the show notes for the episode, I'll link, or rather I'll leave an image with a Lensbaby that I've taken with a Lensbaby so you can see what they kind of look like. So I got that because I wanted to just try something different. So a new lens can be a really great way to shake things up. If you've been feeling like you're taking the same photos in the same way all the time, then simply using a new lens is a great way just to kind of shake yourself out of a bit of a rut. It's forcing your brain to try something new. Now, even if you don't have a new lens, because let's face it, lenses are expensive, just sometimes using your existing lenses in a different way. So for example, if you always shoot with a wide angle lens inside, shake it up and try using a telephoto lens indoors, or vice versa. If you always shoot portraits with a telephoto lens, which is absolutely great and fantastic, try shooting with wide angles and take more environmental portraits, for example. So you can definitely use what you have and try and do that in different ways. Or if there's just a lens that you haven't had on your camera for a while, again, doing that. It's just forcing your brain into a little bit of a different perspective, which can help you feel a little bit more creative. So for me, the Lens Baby was just a way of trying to get a little bit more creative, looking at things in a different way. And it's definitely a little bit more challenging because it's manual focus and you've got to manually shift the lens to where you want it to go and then manually dial in the focus. Much more difficult. And it can be a little bit challenging to use a Lens Baby, but absolutely fun. I'm going to be trying it for flower photography, and I've also been really enjoying it for night photography. I think it's going to be fun for street photography as well. So that's something that I am looking at doing with it. So it'll be interesting to go and use it. I'm just going to whack it on my camera and see what I can come up with. So something a little bit different for me. And as I say, for you, not suggesting that you go out and get a Lens Baby. For me, this is a final lens that I bought, and I've been photographing now for 17, 18 years, and I've just bought a Lens Baby. So it's not something that I would say, oh, run out and get one. If you're new to photography, I wouldn't recommend going and getting a Lens Baby. But, if you're a little bit further on in your journey and you want something new and exciting, that's fun. But otherwise, regardless of where you are, as I say, trying out maybe just getting a new lens. I just got a second-hand one. Or did I? No, I ended up buying it new just because I was waiting for one to come up second-hand. And Lens Babies aren't that amazingly popular, so they didn't come up that often with the right fit and exactly what I wanted. So I ended up actually buying it new, but I would have bought it secondhand. So I buy secondhand lenses now. It's just so much cheaper, and it's just allows me to get a little bit more bang for my buck. So if you can, maybe try and swing a new lens if you have the money for it, or you can also as well, you can hire lenses. I've just always found that the idea of, giving out a couple of £100 or dollars to hire one, and I can put that towards the cost of it. I've just never quite done it. But if you are in a photography group, you might want to swap lenses with someone else, or as I say, use what you have, but use it in a different situation entirely. Try something different with the lenses that you have. Okay, so we have a project. In my case, a project 365. For you, that could be any type of project that you want to do. And the second one is for me, playing with my Lens Baby and really trying to get to grips with that. But for you, that could just be playing with a new piece of photography equipment or using your existing equipment in different ways. The third thing that I'm going to be focusing on, and this is something I think we should all focus on, and that is printing more of our photos. So, how many photos do you have on your hard drive that is not in a printed form anywhere? If it's me, I'm looking at thousands, absolutely thousands. So whilst I'm not saying that all of these photos are print worthy, I certainly don't print as much as I should. Now, I used to create a family photo book each year. And I did this all the time when my son was little. As he's gotten older, as I say, we tend to do less things that can go in a family photo album because he doesn't really like to spend time with us anymore. It will come to you all. If you're sitting there with a 3-year-old, give them a great big hug because another 10 years and they've gone off you. Being the mother of a young boy, you are the entire world. They love you so much. And then it's like, I'm going up to my room and you don't see them again for the next 12 hours. But anyway, I digress. I have family photo books from when my son was younger, and I love them, absolutely love them. And as I say, I have stopped taking quite so many photos in a year now, just because, as my son's gotten older, it's less and less photos. And I myself have just fallen into this photography kind of rut of not really picking up my camera as often as I should. So I don't really do the family photo books anymore, but I do want to get into printing more photos and popping them in frames around the house. So I have actually went and bought lots of new frames. They are sitting there waiting for new photos to be printed, added, and hung up. The other thing that I'm going to do is do a Project 52 collage template. Now, I created this years ago in Photoshop, and I created it specifically for doing a Project 52. And basically it's got 52 frames in this collage, and I'm going to choose the best photo from each week of my Project 365. So if I'm taking a photo a day, well, hopefully, and then I'm just going to choose the best one for my Project 52, so that I can pop that into the collage. And at the end of the year, I'm going to have this collage with 52 photos. So that's my next goal, is to print more photos. And for me, that means having them around the house and just getting more images printed and into frames. And I'm going to do the Project 52. Now, I do say that this is great for everyone to do. I think that I learn a lot more about editing when I have to print, because when you print, it changes ever so slightly what it looks like on a paper. And you really get to understand your editing when you start seeing it printed. You start seeing the areas that are out of gamut. In other words, they're too bright or too dark to print well, or the colours are out of gamut. It's too bright a red, for example, and you'll just get blobs. And you start to learn more about aspect ratios. There's lots of things that you start thinking about once you start having to print your photos. So I would really encourage you to print your images. Just get yourself some frames and then go and get some photos printed up on the wall, and then you can change them out. Or you can do what I do, which is I do have a few more things around the house, which is collage templates. And it's a great way of grouping together similar photos. So for example, you could create a collage of all your favorite flower photos, for example. And you can also create photo books. Let's say if you've got a family photo book and your goal is to document your days, then a family photo book at the end of each year is just wonderful, and I would strongly recommend it. But even if you aren't doing that, then an album of all your photos of, your landscapes, or if your travels or flower photography, group them together and pop them into a book. So for years, I would still do it if I was doing it, but Lightroom Classic is a fantastic way of doing this, because you can just create the book right in Lightroom Classic. Let me tell you, such a huge time saver, and you can do it throughout the year as you go along. Absolutely loved it. I don't think I would have got my photo books for each year printed if I hadn't done it that way. So if you do have Lightroom Classic, create your photo books in there. Such a huge time saver. Okay, my fourth and final thing that I'm going to be focusing on this year is actually selling my spare equipment. So I am a hoarder when it comes to photography equipment. I have all of the cameras that I have had since I started this. I was about to say this lark, since I took up photography back in, I think it was 2007. I got my first camera and I got my first DSLR in 2009, and I have them all. So I started off with a Panasonic, which was a high-end point and shoot. I then got a Canon Rebel T3i back in 2009. Pretty sure that's what it was. Then I got a Canon 5D Mark II, or was it Mark III? Mark III. And then I went to a mirrorless and I got the Canon R6. And I've kept them all. I never use the Rebel. In fact, my husband just took up photography and he's taken it. And so actually I won't be selling that. That's a point. But I don't need 3 cameras really, do I? And I've kept every lens that I have. I will actually record a podcast episode on all the lenses that I have so you can see inside my camera bag. But I only use 2 or 3 of them on any regular basis. So I'm going to be selling off the equipment that I don't use. Now, if you're new to photography, you're probably more about adding to your collection than selling. But if you have been shooting for a while, then maybe have a look and see, do you actually use everything that you have? And do you need to hold on to it? So for me, I might consider, once I've kind of looked and see which ones that I don't use and that I can sell on, I might consider just buying a lens to accommodate some of the ones that I've given away. So not given away, sold. But for example, maybe buying a 24-70, and I could, in theory, get rid of my wide angle lens and maybe get rid of my 85. But I love that lens, so it's very hard. And the reason I've never managed to sell them is I look at each one and go, but I love that lens for. So I never quite managed to do it. But this year I am going to make a concerted effort to normalize my lens collection and get down to just having around 3 lenses. So if you shoot zoom lens, you'll normally have one lens that covers, a good sort of 3 focal lengths usually, but it can be different depending on what you're doing. But for many people, they will have a wide angle, mid-range and a telephoto all in one zoom lens. So for example, the 24-70 gives you all 3. The 24, the 50 and the 70 is giving you that sort of wide angle, mid-range and telephoto. But if you shoot primes, which I do, then you might want to consider that as well, getting something like this holy trinity of lenses, they call it. So when you get 3 lenses, they give you a good range of focal lengths. For me, that would probably be my 35, 85 and 135. And then everything out of that, I think, can kind of go. That's what I'm looking at the moment. As I say, I'm going to sit down, really look at what I have and try and get rid of a few of those as well. But maybe you can look at your equipment and make yourself a wish list of things that you want to get. Maybe find the lens that is on your, must-have list, and go and have a look and see what is out there. And maybe consider getting rid of a lens that you don't use anymore. Many of us started life with the kit lens that came with your camera. Then many people updated to the 50mm f1.8. And then maybe over time, you got yourself another lens, and that's the lens you use all the time and you never use the other 2. Well, do you know what? You can sell those lenses. They actually hold on to their value really well. So if you've got beginner equipment that you don't use anymore, consider selling it. There is going to be someone, and it might be you listening to this podcast episode, who want to upgrade to a 50mm f1.8, and you can go and get a second-hand one. And if you are no longer use yours, pop that up on the second-hand site. I guarantee there will be many people who would love to buy it. So there we have it. That is the 4 things I'm focusing on this year. So the first is a Project 365, which is taking a photo each day for a year, knowing full well that I'm going to fail. In fact, I have already, but really trying to make daily photography a priority. My second thing is to really try focusing on taking photos with my Lensbaby for a while, just because that lens is new and exciting, and I want to try out something different. So that for me is doing the Lensbaby. As I say, for you, it could be something else. The third thing is printing more photos. I really want to get to a point where I have a lot of photos on my wall. I was so embarrassed the other day. I was on a Zoom call with someone and went, "Oh, is that your photo behind you?" I was like, "Oh no, that's just a canvas I picked up from somewhere." And I thought, God, why have I got a picture of someone else's picture of a flower on my wall and I've got a hard drive filled of my own? Doesn't make sense. So my goal is to go and get more of my photos printed. And my final one is to sell off some of the equipment that I no longer use, either to make way for some new equipment or more likely just to kind of normalize the amount of lenses that I have and just keep the ones that I really love to use and get rid of the rest. Now, as I say, we've got lots more resources for you. If you head to the show notes for this episode, I'll link to a number of things for you. with some ideas of things you can do for yourself that you might want to focus on in 2025 for your own photography journey. So be sure to go to the show notes and check that out as well. But apart from that, that is it for me for this week. I will see you again next week when I'm actually going to have some tips for you to help you complete a Project 52 or a Project 365. So if you were thinking that, great, I'm doing a Project 365 too, or you want to do another type of project, then I'm going to give you tips to help you complete one. Okay, that's it for this week. I will see you again next week, same time, same place. Bye for now.